Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident fanalist, as always, Ryan Schlipp. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. Well, we've got two very simple directives today. We're going to look at it's going to be sort of part two of looking at the Steelers. We're going to look at them more from a coaching, schematics, stylistic standpoint. And then part two is that we are going to kind of look at the upcoming games, see which games matter to us, et cetera, give you a little bit of details and things of that nature. I haven't looked at it yet. I'll get there when I get there. But as soon as we walked in the door, my son immediately, as soon as he gets internet, wants to check fantasy. He's like, oh, Lamar's not playing against the Bears. Oh, frickin'. Just paving that road for the Bears in gold, aren't we? But we'll see. We'll see if that's the case and what's all going on there. If you wanted to hear a little bit more about the players, we talked about that yesterday, so you can go back into yesterday's podcast and kind of dig into that. Today's a little bit more about the zoomed out view of the team as a whole. All right, so starting off, obviously a lot of these, well, I should say the head coach is obviously very familiar. It's been the same guy for a long time. The quarterback is very familiar to us. Offensive and defensive coordinators, though, that's kind of what it's going to come down to. So right now the Pittsburgh Steelers are at 4-2. They're at the top of the AFC North. All is looking pretty solid. However, underneath that is a bit of an issue. The Steelers right now, I talked about yesterday how old their defense is. Part of what comes with an old defense is an expensive defense. They have the highest paid defense in the NFL, and it is massively underperforming. Not surprisingly or not unfamiliar, Aaron Rodgers is once again carrying dead weight, as the Steelers' defense is one of the worst units right now in football. Mike Tomlin is in his 19th season. He's in a very unusual situation where his offense is exceeding expectations and is carrying his defense. They're using a innovative heavy personnel package under Arthur Smith, pretty well-known figure. The defense, however, ranks 28th in total yards and 31st in passing yards allowed. Disconnect between the offense and defense has created a sense of urgency around whether Arthur Smith and his philosophy, along with Aaron Rodgers' fantastic play, at least the last couple weeks, can compensate for Terrell Austin, the defensive coordinator's struggling unit. Rodgers is on pace right now for 39 touchdowns, which not only is a solid number for him, but it would shatter Ben Roethlisberger's franchise record of 34. On the flip side, the defense is allowing opponents to convert 41.9% of third downs, which ranks 25th in the NFL. So they're at 4-2. They're looking real good. But underneath that is a reality that this is a very shaky foundation we're on right now, and they're going to need to get the defense to wake up a little bit if they're going to have actual, real playoff viability. Not that Rodgers can't perform some magic and drag them to the playoffs, but if they're going to be a legit contender, the defense cannot continue to perform this way. Kind of looking at their coaches as an overview, Mike Tomlin, again, very familiar face, 19th season. He's now the NFL's longest tenured active head coach after Bill Belichick left. 2024 ended with 5 straight losses and a playoff defeat to Baltimore. As a result, Tomlin, rather than kind of wholesale change, decided to retain all 3 of his coordinators, looking for more continuity. He's also very well known as a loyal coach, so he decided to kind of stick with that philosophy, keep the boys, and see if we can't run it back. Arthur Smith, second year. He's been around a long time, very well known offensive mind. He was last in Atlanta, where he posted 3 consecutive 7-10 seasons as the head coach there. He brings his distinctive artistic smash mouth, Art Smith, artistic smash mouth. I don't freaking know. I don't make these things up, okay? That wasn't me. His artistic smash mouth philosophy that blends old school power running with modern motion and misdirection concepts. His backgrounds include successful stints as Tennessee's OC, 2019 and 2020 were the Titans ranked 4th in scoring, 2nd in total yards in 2020. His system features extensive use of 12 personnel, which is 2 tight ends, a running back, and 2 receivers. He is kind of known as just a tight. That's the one thing I know about Arthur Smith is tight ends. That's it, if you could just sum him up. He also uses heavy packages with 6 offensive linemen. His approach represents a significant departure from recent Steelers offenses, emphasizing physicality at the point of attack and using pre-snap motion extensively to diagnose defensive alignments. In 2024, Smith improved Pittsburgh's scoring from 28th to 16th in the league, and as you can see, they've taken a bit of a step again. This has been a very similar thing that we're noticing as we go from week to week to week. We've played a lot of AFC North, so maybe that's part of it, but the amount of teams, Packers included, that are shifting to heavier personnel, and we knew that this was going to happen. This was something that we had talked about for a while, that as the league started getting smaller and smaller defensively with these quick, fast linebackers, that you're going to start seeing offenses get back to heavier and heavier to be able to attack those weaker, smaller linebackers. And so just going through this process week after week, it feels like almost, if not all, the offenses we've gone up against have had some level of emphasis on 12 personnel, heavy packages, all that kind of stuff. And Arthur Smith has been doing this for a long time. I mean, going back to Tennessee, Derrick Henry, hardcore downhill smash mouth football, back before it was cool, Arthur Smith in Tennessee, and then you had Baltimore were the two that I could think of that have been doing this for a while. Terrell Austin enters his 3rd season as defensive coordinator after being promoted internally in 2022. 60-year-old Pittsburgh native previously served as the team's senior defensive assistant and secondary coach. Austin's resume includes highly successful years as Detroit's DC from 2014 to 2017, and a Super Bowl ring as Baltimore's secondary coach 2011 to 13. Under Austin, from 22 to 24, the Steelers' defense ranked tied for 1st in interceptions with 53, 2nd in takeaways with 83, and 5th in scoring defense at 19.9 points per game. However, his bend-don't-break philosophy showed cracks in late 2024, particularly with communication breakdowns in the secondary that have persisted into 2025. On special teams, they have Danny Smith, his 13th season as a special teams coordinator. He is a 71-year-old veteran. He's overseen Chris Boswell's development into an elite kicker with an 88% career field goal percentage, 2nd among kickers with 300-plus attempts since 2015. Smith's passionate, high-energy coaching style and attention to detail have made him a social media favorite for his sideline celebrations and excessive gum chewing. Classic old-school coaching move. Signature element. Pittsburgh Steelers offense is extensive jumbo packages, including 6 offensive linemen, multiple tight ends, particularly the 6'7", 300-pound Darnell Washington. I wanted him to be a Packer so bad. I bet Aaron Rodgers is very happy. Rodgers has been advocating for these big boy tight ends. I remember the days of him going out trying to recruit people like Jimmy Graham and whatnot, which I thought was a great pairing. Didn't really hit its stride until the postseason, but it was a thing of beauty. But he's got Darnell Washington to work with now. Steelers ran 48 of 54 snaps with multiple tight ends in one game, bucking the NFL's typical 11 personnel trend. The heavy approach has produced impressive efficiency so far. Smith's tight end room includes Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, who previously played with Smith in Tennessee, and I believe Miami. Washington, Connor Hayward, and I think that's it, which creates consistent personnel mismatches against opposing defenses. He's got a run-first mentality, 144 rushing attempts, 567 yards, 120 completions on 174 attempts. The offense is generating 25 points per game, which is 11th in the NFL, 297.5 yards per game. However, the numbers hide some trends. Pittsburgh ranks 8th in third down conversion rate, 43.3%, and 1st in third and short conversions at 77.3%, yet runs the fewest plays per drive in the entire league. Paradox suggests the offense excels in crucial short yardage situations, but struggles to sustain extended drives. You know Jeff Hafley is sitting there just dying to employ this bend-don't-break nonsense. They won't be able to do it all the way down the field. It's going to be great. Smith promised significant adjustments for 2025, particularly increased use of the middle of the field after avoiding it with Russell Wilson in 2024. The offense emphasizes play-action passing built off the run game, quick-release concepts to protect Rodgers, which we talked about. He's getting the ball out pretty quick. Red zone performance started exceptionally strong, 7 of 8, which is 87.5% in the first 3 weeks, with Rodgers completing 6 of 6 red zone passes for touchdowns, but has since regressed. Opening drive efficiency represents a massive improvement, 83.3% scoring rate, which is second in the NFL, with 50% touchdown rate, tied for third, compared to 0 opening drive touchdowns in all of 2024. The personnel packages reflect Smith's tight end-centric philosophy and willingness to use unconventional alignments. Beyond the jumbo package, the offense employs extensive 12 personnel and 21 personnel. These formations allow Pittsburgh to create favorable blocking angles and personnel mismatches while keeping defenses guessing about run versus pass. Smith uses pre-snap motion extensively, a carryover from his Tennessee days, to diagnose defensive alignments and identify potential coverage weaknesses before the snap. Rodgers, again, posting some pretty solid numbers, solid for himself as well as for the franchise. Beyond the statistics, Rodgers' leadership has transformed the offense. Former GM Doug Whaley identified Rodgers' accountability and standard setting as a great advantage for Pittsburgh, noting how he holds players responsible while maintaining respect. The 41-year-old quarterback makes quick pre-snap adjustments, displays patience in the pocket, and has successfully integrated Smith's system, despite initial skepticism about their comparability. Third down efficiency has become a major strength, with Pittsburgh converting 43.3%. This is a massive improvement from the middle-of-the-pack performance they had in this category in 2024. The tight end versatility creates legitimate matchup problems. Freiermuth provides reliable possession receiving with 187 yards, while Washington emerged as both an elite blocker and viable receiver. Jonnu Smith brings speed and route running ability that complements the power elements. The depth allows Smith to maintain heavy personnel without sacrificing his passing concepts. The most glaring offensive weakness is a complete lack of explosive plays. Pittsburgh managed only 10 explosive plays through 4 games, tied for 30th, with explosive play rate just 4.7%, which is 22nd. The first explosive rush play didn't occur until Week 2 garbage time, 119 minutes into the season. This deficiency severely limits the offense's ability to quickly move down the field and score, forcing reliance on methodological drives that are easily derailed by penalties or negative plays. The running game has produced inconsistent results despite Smith's emphasis on ground dominance, kind of sounds like the Packers. The 3.9 yards per carry average on 144 attempts represents below average efficiency. The team struggles particularly early in the season to establish any ground rhythm. Jaylen Warren, who took over as a lead back after Najee Harris's departure, averaged only 3.4 yards per carry early before improving later. Kenneth Gainwell has provided solid backup work, including a career game against Minnesota, but the overall production hasn't matched the blocking investment. The unit, featuring Broderick Jones at left tackle, Zach Frazier, Suomalo, Fatanu over at right tackle, they continue to work toward cohesion. Jones struggled significantly early before showing some improvement, while Fatanu remains inconsistent. The over-reliance on jumbo packages to create push suggests the base 5-man unit cannot consistently dominate at the point of attack. Receiver depth beyond DK Metcalf presents major concerns. Metcalf, acquired via trade from Seattle for a second-round pick and signed to a 5-year, $150 million extension, leads all receiving categories with 406 yards, 4 touchdowns, 18.5 yards per catch average through 6 games. However, his production has been inconsistent, just 135 yards in the first 3 games before his breakout 126-yard performance against Minnesota. Calvin Austin III showed promise before suffering a shoulder injury in Week 4, leaving his status uncertain. He is going to be playing in this game. Roman Wilson remains unproven, while role players like Ben Skoranek and Scotty Miller are depth pieces rather than legitimate threats. Remember, Scotty Miller is out in this game. The lack of a consistent second receiver allows defenses to key in on DK Metcalf. The red zone regression following a hot start has become problematic. After covering 7 of 8 opportunities, the offense went 2 of 5 against Minnesota in Week 4 with questionable play calling in goal line situations. The inconsistency suggests opponents have adjusted to Pittsburgh red zone concepts, and Smith hasn't countered effectively. Ball security concerns persist, particularly with Warren, who's fumbled 7 times in 3 seasons. The overall turnover count remains relatively low at 5 giveaways, generating a positive turnover differential of +5, but continued ball security lapses have proved costly in close games. Most concerning is opposing coordinators' identification of Smith's weakness. While he excels with run game and play-calling concepts, his pure drop-back passing game struggles significantly. Rodgers' average depth of target ranks near the bottom of the league at 7.4 yards per attempt, and the offense has attempted only 174 passes through 6 games, a relatively low volume. This limitation makes the offense predictable in obvious passing situations and reduces comeback capability when trailing. So it doesn't feel like a typical Aaron Rodgers shootout kind of a thing. It's a little bit different. They're asking Rodgers to, and apparently he's obliging, to kind of get behind this run-first, dink-and-dunk style offense that relies on efficiency pushing all the way down the field. And again, that kind of plays into what a lot of teams have been doing against the Packers, so I can't imagine they're going to get away from that, especially against this unit, because the last thing they want to do is have Rodgers hold the ball in the pocket to try to push the ball down the field with guys like Micah Parsons coming after him so that you can push the ball and challenge guys like Xavier McKinney. It's just not your favorite option if you can avoid it. Now, they're going to want to try to do that with DK if they can, but they haven't been doing it, and I can't imagine this is the week that it starts. And so you get into another situation again where they're going to use their tight ends, and they're going to use DK and everybody else to try to challenge, first of all, off the line. If we're going to try to press DK, for example, it's just going to be some real quick push-off, slant to the inside, quick pass. They're going to use the tight ends to do their little hook curls in between the linebackers to dink and dunk to completely neutralize our pass rush. So that's going to be the game, and then they're going to see if they can do that all the way down the field. It's going to be up to our guys to be disruptive when they can. Because you got to remember one of the things we talked about yesterday, we'll see how it goes. Everybody's been superhuman with pressure in their face this year for the Packers, but Rodgers has not been handling pressure very well. So even if you can't get him to the ground, if you can get in his face consistently, if you can make him uncomfortable in the pocket, hopefully there's going to be a couple mistakes, and the ability for him to dink and dunk all the way down the field ends up getting a bit reduced. All right, let's take our first break. We'll dig a little bit more into the defensive specifics, and we'll go from there. Defense, in a nutshell, 3-4 front with heavy nickel usage. Pretty standard stuff. This has been a Pittsburgh Steelers staple essentially since the 80s. However, the modern implementation features significantly more sub-package and situational variations. Through the first 4 games and 271 defensive plays, the Steelers deployed nickel 57.9% of their snaps, making it the primary package rather than their base 3-4, which appeared on just 34.7% of their snaps. It's pretty standard also. 3-4 alignment features Cam Hayward and Keanu Benton as primary defensive tackles, with Harmon, the rookie, providing impressive efficiency as a rotational piece. Again, we kind of went through that a little bit yesterday. Benton and Harmon are kind of question marks a little bit. Depending on what you're looking at, you're either really impressed/scared, or you're not super impressed/scared, especially Harmon, because he's so new and I believe was out with injury a couple weeks or something. He hasn't played, I don't believe, every single game. So kind of hard to know for sure what you're getting with a guy like Harmon, but couple that with the edges, and it's a pretty scary front. The outside linebacker/edge rusher position features TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith as the starters, with Nick Herbig, who I mentioned is an absolute unit, emerging as arguably the defense's best pass rusher. Inside linebackers Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson handle run fits and coverage responsibilities, though both have struggled significantly in pass coverage. Talked a lot about that yesterday. The secondary underwent massive roster turnover in the offseason. Pittsburgh traded Minkah Fitzpatrick and added Jalen Ramsey, Darius Slay, and Juan Thornhill as veteran additions to complement second-year cornerback Joey Porter Jr. Deshaun Elliott handles strong safety duties, while Brandon Echols, Chuck Clark, and Jabril Peppers provide depth. Despite the investment, this is the highest-paid defense in NFL history. The execution has been severely disappointing. Austin's philosophy emphasizes taking away the ball and disruption rather than consistent shutdown defense. The bend-don't-break mentality accepts yards between the 20s while tightening in the red zone and forcing turnovers. From 22 to 24, Austin's defense led the league in interceptions and ranked second in takeaways, demonstrating the approach's effectiveness. However, in 2025, it's exposed the downside. When turnovers don't materialize and the rush doesn't get home quickly, the coverage scheme cannot hold up. Mike Tomlin's defensive influence remains significant despite having a defensive coordinator. Tomlin, who came up as a defensive backs coach, stayed heavily involved in defensive planning and adjustments. The dual leadership structure sometimes creates ambiguity about responsibility when issues arise, as evidenced by both Austin and Tomlin facing criticism for the unit's 2025 struggles. Pittsburgh's blitz rate has increased to 30.9% in 2025, up from just 29%, not a huge jump, in 2024. Though this still ranks around middle of the NFL teams, the more significant change is the five-man rush rate jumping to 34.9% from 26.5% last season, the second highest rate since 2015. The increase stems from more base defense usage and reflects the coaching staff recognition that a four-man rush wasn't generating adequate pressure early in the season. The pressure concepts feature creative elements when properly executed. The Steelers deploy a three outside linebacker package when Wyatt, Herbig, and Highsmith are all healthy, creating matchup problems for offensive lines, trying to identify who's rushing versus who's dropping. Defensive line stunts and gap exchanges aim to free up one-on-one opportunities with the edge rushers. Green dog or hug rushes allow linebackers to attack if running backs or tight ends stay in to block, keeping offenses from easily sliding protection. Safety blitzes from Ramsey and Elliott add another dimension, though these leave the secondary vulnerable to quick throws. The fundamental issue is that blitzes haven't produced the expected results. Austin admitted bluntly, quote, "Blitzing almost doesn't do much for us, almost gets them first down. When pressure doesn't arrive quickly within roughly 2.5 seconds, the coverage behind it collapses. The rush and coverage must work in concert, and Austin acknowledged they're a little bit off in that area. Coverage schemes have become problematically predictable. In 2024, Pittsburgh used cover 3 on 30.8% of snaps, which is fourth most in the NFL, and cover 1 on 25.8%, which is ninth in the NFL. The defense operates from a single high alignment on 56.5% of snaps, second most in the NFL behind Cleveland, making pre-snap identification easier for quarterbacks. Now, to be clear, this is one of the staples of this team, which is leading a lot of people in Packers circles to say that this is a game to attack down the field. Unlike last week against Arizona, the lack of disguise and post-snap rotation, film analysts noted only 5 to 6 post-snap rotations against Cincinnati in Week 7, allowing Joe Flacco to simply read pre-snap looks and exploit leverage. Arizona was the exact opposite. Despite whatever struggles they had, they were very well known for being complex and using tons of very confusing motion, post-snap adjustments, all those kinds of things to make it very hard to read. The Steelers apparently are not doing that nearly as much. Jamar Chase confirmed after the game, quote, "They did exactly what we're expecting and hoping they'd do. Man coverage. We knew that they were going to put Joey on T and put Jalen on me." The cover 3 zone scheme features 3 deep defenders and 4 underneath zones, providing good deep ball protection but creating vulnerabilities to curl flat combinations, as well as sail concepts and 4 verts. Cover 1, man coverage with single high safety, allows aggressive blitzing and closes windows inherent in zone coverage, but requires cornerbacks to win one-on-one matchups consistently. Those are the areas where attacking deep can be successful. Pittsburgh's corners, however, haven't done so. Ramsey ranks 106th out of 108 cornerbacks in man coverage by PFF grades, despite being first in zone coverage, while Slay ranks 60th in man coverage. The defense rarely deploys cover 4, quarters coverage, despite ranking 4th in EPA when using it. They rank 31st in cover 4 frequency, representing a massive missed opportunity to utilize a coverage that statistically succeeds when called. Cover 0, an all-out blitz with no deep safety, appears on only 1.2% of snaps, 24th in the NFL, reflecting conservative philosophies overall. Critics have hammered the scheme's static nature and lack of pre-snap movement. The defense operates largely as if it's still early 2000s rather than adapting to modern offensive complexity. Opposing quarterbacks can identify coverage before the snap and exploit predictable rotations, negating the talent advantage Pittsburgh theoretically holds. 2025 defense entered with historic expectations following the massive investments and high-profile veteran additions. Tomlin stated in preseason, quote, "We feel really good about the prospects of this group. We've got enough talent. We've got enough schematics to do big, big things. And when I say big things, I'm talking about historic things." Again, despite their record, statistically, that has not happened. We went through the stats: 28th in yards, 31st in passing yards, 31st in missed tackles also. Pass rush has shown flashes of dominance when properly deployed. Herbig has emerged as a breakout star with 4.5 sacks, despite missing games, as well as 23 pressures and efficiency that former Steeler Chris Hoke called, quote, "the best pass rusher with the Steelers, even with TJ Watt." As I said, as stupid as it sounds for me to say that, I think that is the situation. Watt has taken a half a step back, whether that's just a fluky slow start that he's about to take off or a legit sign that he's declining in his older age, I don't know. But Herbig, so far, is ascending as Watt has been descending. Red zone defense represents the unit's most consistent strength, ranking 4th in the NFL at preventing scores inside the 20-yard line. The compressed field allows the defense to play more aggressively, reduces the coverage area, and forces offenses into predictable play calling. The success particularly validates the bend-don't-break philosophy: give up yards between the 20s, but tighten when it matters most. However, the weaknesses far outweigh the positives. Pass coverage has collapsed catastrophically, with opponents repeatedly exploiting communication breakdowns and scheme predictability. Joe Flacco completed 66% of passes for 342 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions in Week 7. Their third down defense ranks 25th in the NFL, an unacceptable conversion rate that prevents the defense from getting off the field. Opponents are able to sustain drives through conversion, keeping the Pittsburgh defense on the field for an average of 67.8 snaps per game, on pace for 1,152 total, the highest in the past decade. This exhaustion compounds as games progress, particularly in the fourth quarter when defenses need to close out victories. Missed tackles have plagued on every level of the defense, with Pittsburgh ranking 31st. Fundamental breakdown allows yards after contact and turning manageable gains into chunk plays. Look out for Tucker Kraft. The tackling issues stem from poor angles, hesitant pursuit, and players trying to strip the ball rather than secure the tackle, which is maybe one of the downsides of being a team that is focused on takeaways. When you drill punch it out, punch it out, punch it out, it's great when it works, but it's also not exactly the most fundamental tackling approach. Coaching questions have intensified as the season progressed. Terrell Austin's job security has come under media scrutiny, though Tomlin's loyalty makes midseason changes unlikely. Player deployment issues have raised eyebrows, particularly Nick Herbig's underutilization in the Week 7 loss, despite him being the team's most efficient rusher. Former Steelers Ben Roethlisberger warned fans not to expect dramatic turnaround given the investment. Quote, "What are you going to do there? You have so much money invested." So we don't need to dig too much into special teams or do any more of a recap. I think that's pretty much the summary there in a nutshell. That does, I mean, it's still relatively early, and similar to the Green Bay Packers, one of the things that gives me pause is you can't just walk into it and say, okay, it's a good offense and a bad defense. The problem with that, aside from just general, things change in the NFL, is when you have the defensive talent that they have, when you have Watt getting off to a slow start, just as one example, he could absolutely start to explode, which changes the complete dynamic of this defense and suddenly makes it a lot easier to run the style of defense that they want to run. If any one of these things starts to click, and it could start this week for all we know, suddenly they go from having a good offense and a good defense to just a dominant team on offense, defense, and special teams. On the flip side, though, things could obviously change offensively. I mentioned how Rodgers' stats have been relatively good all year, but as far as the grades are concerned, it's only been the past 2 weeks. If the past 2 weeks ended up being kind of fluky, it's possible the defense is old, decrepit, and can't really run this scheme. The defense is, and the offense is also kind of a paper tiger or paper dragon or whatever the thing is that's about to fall off. So, It's hard to know. It's hard to know what you're walking into. It reminds me again of the Packers, where the talent is there for them to ascend, but the question marks are there enough so that you could say, I wonder if this is just going to be a bad season. I mean, if the offense doesn't kind of get itself moving and the defense never really gets back to what it was, it ends up being one of those teams that's decent, and they're going to win probably enough games to get to the playoffs, but are not really inspiring a lot of confidence that this team is going to win a Super Bowl. So it's hard to know what's going to happen on Sunday night. There's so many variables as it is. So many things change from week to week. I don't know. I mean, if you just could answer the question for me, what version of Rodgers and what version of Love am I getting? Think about how big of a dynamic that is just by itself. You know what I mean? Then add in, like, are any of these two teams going to be struggling with penalties? Is it going to be a officiating crew that is throws a lot of flags, or are they kind of a let them play? I mean, all these different variables change the dynamic massively, and there's so many variables, it's crazy. So again, this is sort of an overview. It's not sort of, it's definitely an overview, but I just want to keep in mind that it's not set in stone. This is what has happened up to this point. What happens moving into the future, that I don't know. But this is at least a little bit of something to, I don't even want to say expect, but at least when you see it, maybe you can understand it and also understand what it is that they're trying to do and what we need to be able to do to overcome what it is that they generally do well, kind of a thing. But, for all we know, this is going to be the greatest Hall of Fame defensive performance of the season that we're about to frickin' walk into here, I don't know. But anywho, why don't we take our final break? We'll start ripping through some of these games and see what we can uncover, see if we can't make a little money this week. What do you say? We'll take a break. We'll be right back. Alrighty, let's do some Sunday action. Again, no real particular order, just in the order that I see it listed here. Bills-Panthers, first of all, of no real massive interest. Carolina Panthers are 4-3, so it's not exactly like they're a nobody team, especially winning 3 of their last 3 and 4 of their last 5. So presumably we should be rooting for the Bills, who last I saw, let's see, are they still 7.5? It's down to 7 where I'm at. But some general notes: Carolina, pretty good run game. Defense seems to be improving quite a bit. Buffalo coming off a bit of a skid and coming off a bye. They really need to get off to a fast start. I aggregated a lot of betting news out there, and the two things that came up is Panthers cover, Bills win, and Bills team total over 26.5. I think the main thought here with the Bills on that over 26.5 is that this is a statement game. Again, they've been slipping a little bit. They've looked pedestrian, and they're coming off a bye week. Carolina also has some pretty weak pass rush, which is going to give Buffalo that opportunity to do what they need to do, which hopefully is come out swinging. And then there's also a schematic matchup here. The Buffalo Bills are better than just about any team in zone coverage, and the Panthers play a lot of zone. Jets-Bengals, another game that's really irrelevant to us. Jets, the only semi-interesting thing here is the Jets are in a complete and total free-for-all. The Jets are doing what the Jets seem to do every year around this time, which is not only is the team bad, but it's just getting a lot of bad press because of a lot of stupid decisions. They don't know who the quarterback's going to be. Everybody that was once revered highly... This is the problem with going to the Jets. You can be the most revered person in the world. By week 6 or 7, you're going to be the laughingstock. So it's pretty ugly over there. Bengals are 6.5-point favorites, at least last I saw. Let me check. And that's down to 6 as well. But some of the things to consider, Joe Flacco is now getting a lot more respect after that big win in Pittsburgh, so there's sort of a higher expectation of what Cincinnati is. Tyrod, however you say his name, Taylor, is expected to be the starter over Fields, which many people feel is an upgrade. Jets are on the road also. This is in Cincinnati, which plays into this. This is another one where the general consensus seems to be pick the Jets to cover, the Bengals to win. I would be scared of picking the Jets to cover considering how bad they are, but their defense is improved, so the Bengals running away with it is going to be a little bit trickier than it may seem. And I think a lot of it just is the large spread is not necessarily in the NFL the easiest thing to overcome, a 7-point victory. A lot of experts seem to think that the line should be closer to 4 points and that 6.5 is way too high. And I think the general thought is there's two big things at hand. One is people are underestimating the Jets because of their record and maybe overestimating the Bengals because of what they did against Pittsburgh. Tyrod Taylor also, again, seen as an upgrade over Justin Fields. He's 62% against the spread, 9-3-1 when he's got 6 or more points laid against him. So he's generally an underrated quarterback. And then there's also the angle that the Bengals defense is atrocious. So again, the Bengals have a terrible defense. The Bengals offense presumably is good, but it's up against a tough defense. I think you have an overrated team on one side, an underrated team on the other, and so there's a good chance for the Jets to at least cover, even though the expectation is the Bengals will win. I got to figure out the what are we calling this here? It's as far as me and the betting stuff, I've got the mystery man behind the curtain. Every week he's going to, thank you, every week he's going to lay out the best bets, leans, and teaser of the week. And the Jets plus 6.5 right now at 6 is seen as a lean. I think I am going to bet that. I think I talked myself into that. Even at 6. I hate when it closes like that, when you're like, all right, fine, I'll do it. And then you see it's not 6.5, it's 6. But hearing that a lot of the pros out there think it should be closer to 4, I think I'm still safe with that. Then we got Browns Patriots, another useless game from our vantage point. Patriots are at home and are 7-point favorites, actually looking like a pretty decent team again. This game features rookie quarterback Gabriel on the road in a pretty tough spot in New England. Drake May in New England is looking quite good. Very good football player right now. He's also got a solid deep ball. New England also has great run defense, which is a problem for Cleveland. So the general consensus here is pick the Patriots to cover with a possible lean under 40.5. 7 points is a lot, but I think, again, you've got a complete opposite dichotomy taking place where New England is ascending under the leadership of I don't want to say elite, but we're pushing in that direction, a very talented, young, and ascending quarterback, whereas Dylan Gabriel is a struggling quarterback in a complete cluster frig of a situation in Cleveland on the road. Browns offense is severely limited, light years behind Drake May. Threw for like 60 yards in their last win and was lucky that he didn't have 8 interceptions. I mean, it's a rough situation. They're going to be heavily reliant on Quinshon Judkins, who is he is looking pretty solid, but again, that is running right into the strength of New England's defense, which is their run defense. So feeling pretty good about the Patriots. Just a question of, do you feel good enough for 7 points? I'm going to go ahead and lay a small wager on that in favor of the Patriots. Then we get to the first game of interest here, which is Bears at Ravens. This game has changed massively. If you had bet on the Bears at some point, you're probably feeling pretty good. When I first put all this together, it was, what do we got here? Ravens minus 6.5. With the news of Lamar that he is not going to be playing in this game, that shifts to -2. Baltimore still favored, but nowhere near as much. He is on our best bets sheet of the week, but that's at Ravens -7. Here's a quick note from the man behind the curtain. He says, I kind of feel like a dummy for adding the Ravens. I also typically bet against teams their first game back, the first time their quarterback, the first game the starting quarterback comes back. He says, typically the lines get inflated and it takes a game for them to get in rhythm, but the Bears are at a clear sell point. He's been talking about that for a while, too. The Bears are overinflated, and they are. And this is what upset me about hearing the Lamar news, because they are due for a loss. And this was just set up to be a perfect punch in the mouth as they lose to the Ravens, and this complicates things. He says, the Bears are at a clear sell point, so hopefully Snoop has a good day off a bye tomorrow. I do expect the Ravens defense to pick it up also. I mean, it's not like they can get any worse, and I believe they are getting some players back. So again, that's one of the things that I'm kind of learning as I listen to the man behind the curtain, as well as dig into some of the betting content on YouTube and whatnot, is a lot of it is you're looking at things that are really good or really bad that will end up getting inflated or deflated. So, the Bears' defense or team overall and their record, when really they've been a sloppy team that has won back-to-back games on the back of really bad quarterback play and just a massive amount of turnovers that are completely, you're not able to, that's not going to continue. There's a sense of regression to the mean. You look at the Ravens defense and you say, okay, this is the worst defense in the history of the known universe, and so the Bears are going to walk all over them. Whereas I think somebody with more of a betting mind or a betting focus looks at it and says there has to be some regression to the mean at some point. And if they can even take a half a step better, I'm not talking about the Ravens having a good defense, but if Baltimore does X, Y, and Z with a 10% improved defense, suddenly you have a Baltimore Ravens victory in the face of what others may not have necessarily seen coming. So I don't know. I'm pretty torn on it. I mean, obviously, we're hopeful that the Ravens win either way. Just from a betting standpoint, it's pretty tough. A lot of people still feel the Ravens are a safe bet. The only problem is when I look at it, a lot of people thought that if Lamar didn't go, it would be somewhere between like a pick to 1.5 points, which is close to where it is. But, if people say they still think there's value at -1. I don't know if I want to bet at -2. I don't know if I want to in general, but the consensus is still that the defense of the Bears is completely fraudulent. Bears defense is described as smoke and mirrors, very fraudulent, very vulnerable. They rank near the bottom of the league in success rate if you remove turnovers. Their success is almost entirely reliant on turnovers, which are very luck-driven. And if you've watched their games, you can see that that's absolutely the case. So I don't know that I would feel super comfortable touching any of the betting stuff personally. But again, it's obviously a very important game for us, and hopefully the Bears or the Ravens can pull this off at home. Next noon game, Dolphins at Falcons. Falcons at home, 7-point favorites. Miami Dolphins in a heck of a tailspin here. As a Packer fan, it's not a massive deal, but Atlanta being NFC, I tend to root against that. So, 3-3 is not necessarily way behind 4-1-1 if Atlanta starts to pick it up. So another loss would just help us secure our position in the NFC a little bit. So from a rooting interest standpoint, certainly hoping for the Dolphins to bounce back. Expect a heavy dose of Bijan Robinson in this game for Atlanta. Miami's defense is terrible against the run, so maybe some fantasy. Not that, if you have Bijan, obviously you're playing him either way, but be prepared for that. It's also worth noting the Atlanta, especially Michael Penix, when you look at his home versus road splits, it's massive. He is significantly better at home. This is a game at home, and this also made it on our betting sheet as one of our teasers of the week. Teaser, for those like me who have no idea what these betting terms mean, essentially is when we're teasing the spread a little bit. So right now the Falcons are -7. However, a lot of places will let you bet a different spread, but then they'll just give you different odds. And so in this game for the teaser of the week, we have the Falcons at -1.5. Again, you're not going to get as good of odds, meaning the payout isn't going to be as much, but it just gives you a little bit more comfort. And generally, the thought process here would be love the Falcons, don't love -7. So if I could just get that a little closer, I feel very confident in it. And that's kind of where we're at. And you can see why that would be the case. Again, when you look at this situation, Dolphins at Falcons, everything is leaning Falcons heavily. I think if you were opposed to the teaser, a lot of the betting professionals that I had tuned into are even comfortable with the line at -7 for the Falcons, so you should certainly feel good at 1.5. The Miami Dolphins defense is characterized as quote-unquote Hall of Fame bad against the run. They're worst in the NFL in several key metrics: 31st in EPA per rush, 32nd in success rate, 32nd in yards allowed per game. They just simply cannot stop the run. The Falcons, who are the #1 rush play rate team, are expected to unleash Bijan Robinson. Analysts are suggesting setting Bijan's rush yard prop to the moon. The thought is that Atlanta will probably give the ball to Bijan 30-plus times. I mean, they are going to run it down their freaking throat. Again, the Michael Penix home field advantage splits. So even though they're going to be running like crazy, Michael Penix just plays significantly better when he's at home. He is 46 out of 46 qualifying quarterbacks in EPA per attempt while on the road. However, when playing at home, Penix ranks 4th in EPA per attempt and 3rd in yards per attempt. It's one of the most drastic things. I mean, it's small sample size, but it's massive. So again, coming into this, people are like, Penix is not super good, whatever. Okay, but that's Penix overall. That's not Atlanta Penix. So up to you. If you're looking to bet it, you could tease it, or if you're feeling a little saucy, go ahead and just play the -7. After that, we got Giants and Eagles. This is a pretty straightforward one in terms of the rooting interest. Obviously, we're rooting for the Giants to find a way to beat their division rival, Philadelphia Eagles. The fact that it's a divisional game does make it a little bit interesting in terms of who knows, anything could happen. It's also worth noting the Eagles have really not in any way looked like a powerhouse. They are 1-2 the last 3 weeks. They lost to the Broncos 21-17. They got smoked by the Giants. Yes, the Giants. 34-17 2 weeks ago. That was away for Philadelphia. And then they beat Minnesota, but Minnesota is not a good team, and it wasn't a very convincing win. It was a 6-point win, 28-22. So it is not a foregone conclusion by any stretch. Again, 2 weeks ago, they got pummeled by the Giants. It is not a foregone conclusion that the Eagles are going to win this game. And yes, we are rooting for the Eagles because the Eagles are currently at 5-2. The Giants are sitting at 2-5. The Giants are 2-2 the last 4 weeks with wins over the Eagles and Chargers, which is relatively impressive. However, they lost to the Saints 26-14, and then the Broncos, I guess by 1 point. But either way, the Giants have a mountain to overcome before I feel like maybe I should have rooted in the other direction. So hopeful in that regard that we can see another loss by the Eagles. It's also worth noting the Eagles have a bye week coming up. There is some thought in terms of, whether people are kind of looking ahead to that bye week. It's hard to imagine that they're overlooking the Giants considering they just got pummeled by them. If anything, they're looking for payback. But there is a question of, you're pretty beat up. You're longing for that bye week. Who knows? From a betting standpoint, Eagles probably looking to reestablish Saquon a little bit. That's been pretty lackluster, and they really have to get back to that. The Giants are coming off a pretty demoralizing loss with that Denver Broncos comeback game. They were basically dead in the water. It looked like the Giants were going to pummel them, and then Denver came back and won narrowly, as I just mentioned. Philadelphia also has that whole revenge thing going on. They did get some defensive pieces back like Carter, so that's going to help them as they come back to beat the living crap out of their little brother who embarrassed them just a couple weeks ago. And so the general consensus seems to be to not only pick the Eagles, but to pick the Eagles to cover, as well as to pick the over for 43.5. Eagles line did move to 7.5 from 7, but we'll assume that it doesn't make a big enough difference to come off of these points here to consider. The points in favor of the Eagles cover, again, motivation and revenge. Humiliated the last time they played. They're going to be much better prepared. Analysts are kind of expecting them to win and win big. They're also expecting the Giants to be deflated coming off that big collapsing loss. Eagles have returning personnel. As I said, Jalen Carter, as well as guys like Quinion Mitchell, are going to be returning to that defense. Those are two of their best defensive players. Giants, on the other hand, are losing people. Guys like Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland are at least concerns due to injuries, whether they play or not. And although Jackson Dart is credited with sort of reviving the Giants a little bit, he has yet to throw an interception at home, but has thrown 3 in 2 road games, and this is a road game. He also suffered an ankle injury that could limit his mobility in this upcoming game. The Giants have lost 12 consecutive games in Philadelphia. The movement from 6.5 to 7 and then to 7.5 suggests professional money is coming in pretty heavily on Philadelphia. I think the biggest concern is that the Eagles have a tendency, like a lot of people feel the Packers do, to get a lead and kind of sit on it and coast and hit, pop it into neutral. And so when you start looking at a 7 to 7.5 point spread, the concern is, although the talent is there, they're probably not going to just pummel them into the ground. There's always a counterpoint. Do what you will with your own money. As for the over 43.5, there is a high-scoring precedent here. First game between these two teams was 51 points. That's even with one of the teams scoring 17. A lot of analysts expect the Eagles to run an absolute, let's just say, come out swinging. Let's go with that. Expectation is 27 to 30 points in that range for the Eagles. And again, Jackson Dart has looked impressive, so there is some expectation that he's still, although maybe not going to have his best game on the road, or even, win the game, he'll do enough to contribute to the score to put it over. Not to mention both defenses are both vulnerable to giving up big chunk plays here and there, with two teams looking to go get chunk plays. The final new game is 49ers at Texans. This is our other teaser of the week. Right now, the line is sitting at Houston Texans minus 2.5. Our teaser of the week would be to move the 49ers line up to 7.5. Again, essentially saying, I like the 49ers a little bit here if you give me a little bit more cushion. Not even to necessarily win, it's just a matter of they won't lose by more than this. From a rooting interest, obviously this is pretty easy. The Texans are the team that we need to be rooting for. Fortunately, they are favorites, and there are quite a few things working in our favor here. Houston does have a pretty strong defense. They do have home field advantage. San Francisco is massively injured. Not that that's really done a good enough job slowing them down, but they're likely going to have Mac Jones again at quarterback. They have no Warner, no Huff, no Bosa. So I know initially the line was Texans plus 1.5. A lot of the chatter at the time was pick the Texans not only to cover but to win. Well, obviously that advice has hit hard enough that the Texans are now 2.5 point favorites, which again, from a rooting standpoint, regardless of the betting, is good news. The fact of the matter is a lot of the people that are very good at this are looking at it going, yeah, dude, the Texans should win this game. Looking at the afternoon window, you got Titans-Colts. That is of zero interest. And what is it currently at? Holy cow. It's always funny when one of the best teams goes up against maybe the worst team when you look at it. It was at minus 14. It's actually up to minus 15. The Colts are now 15-point favorites. Oh, by the way, I missed this. Best bets of the week. We talked about the Ravens already, although that's a little bit of a iffy one. Texans money line was also on that list. Again, I don't know exactly. It hasn't moved a ton. So Texans to win is on our best bets of the week. As for Titans Colts, I mean, it should be an absolute bloodbath. To make matters worse, it's in Indianapolis. Colts are described as being a motivated team and will not take this game lightly. Tennessee has an awful offense and is also contesting a lot of injuries to guys like Simmons and Snead. Indianapolis has the best offense in the NFL right now with Daniel Jones, which makes me laugh, as well as Jonathan Taylor as a complete juggernaut. To make things even crazier, and I wouldn't fully want to endorse something like this because it always scares me to death, but the general consensus seems to be to bet the Colts to cover minus 14. It's up to 15. Can't imagine it makes that big of a difference. That's pretty crazy. Bucks Saints, from a rooting standpoint, we're definitely hoping for a Saints upset with if the Bucks can do similar to what we saw with the Eagles and whatnot on a 2-game skid. That would obviously help our position even more. Interestingly, Tampa Bay was a 4.5-point favorite. It's actually down to just 3.5, so it's not as big as you would have expected, as I would have expected. And this game is down as one of our leans, and it's lean Saints plus 4.5. Now, again, it's down to 3.5. I don't know if that's still a comfortable position, especially since it's down as just a lean. But again, from a rooting standpoint, it does make me feel kind of good that at 4.5, everyone's like, I don't know about all that. A couple of tidbits in that game. New Orleans has obviously got some serious defensive struggles. Their center, McCoy, is out, which is going to contribute to their offensive line issues. However, Tampa Bay, very significant injuries. Evans, Godwin, Irving, questionable. I don't know if those guys are going. I'm not going to go look it up, but they've got some serious injury issues. They're also coming off a really bad loss on a short week. So it's kind of tough. You got some people looking at it as this is going to be a bounce-back game, and they're going to cover. You got others looking at it as this is a beat-up team on a short week. I'm not touching it, but it's going to be a very interesting game, and I'm very hopeful for something very positive. Cowboys at Broncos. Broncos -3 is also on our best bets of the week. Let me read this little snippet put forth by the man behind the curtain. I like Denver. I think we see a bounce back from this defense after allowing so many points. They have been home for 2 weeks now after the London trip, and I think the offense and Bo Nix have found a groove that carries over from that fourth quarter last week. In the last 30 years, the Cowboys are 0-7 straight up and 2-5 against the spread against Denver. Cowboy defense ranks dead last in success rate. Broncos defense ranks number 1 in success rate. Dallas offense looks much different outdoors on grass, 0-3 on a grass surface. Only road win was the Jets on turf. Our line is about 1 point of value in favor of Denver. Not much from a market standpoint yet, but come game day, I can see the public taking the points with Dallas after scoring 44 points last week, and now might be a letdown spot. And then we've got our final game. We have the Sunday night game, Packers at Steelers. Packers have been holding strong at -3 going into this game. This is also our final best bet, Packers-Steelers under 45.5. Unfortunately, a lot of the, I've talked about this already, but since we're doing it now, I might as well do it a little bit more in depth. A lot of the, what would you say? A lot of the information that is relevant to this game is pointing in a negative direction. From what I can tell, a lot of people are betting the Steelers to cover, as well as potentially betting the money line, in other words, betting the Steelers to win the game. Number 1, the quote-unquote Tomlin spot trend. It's the Tomlin voodoo spot. His historical success as an underdog is remarkable. As a home underdog, he holds a 75% record against the spread, going 21-7-3. As an underdog off a loss, he holds a 65% against the spread record, 24-13. As a dog overall since 2007, the Steelers are 64-34-3 against the spread under Tomlin, and he wins 61% of the time outright as a home dog. One analyst noted that the number is 9-2-3 against the spread as a dog of 3 or more at home. This is a spot experts say they want to take all the time. There is the Aaron Rodgers revenge narrative, the situational advantage. Steelers are coming off a mini bye after playing on Thursday Night Football. They have 10 days off. Steelers have a 5-0 against the spread record with a rest advantage since the start of last season. Packers are talented but have been described as inconsistent and volatile. They have not covered in 4 straight games themselves. The analysts noted that the Packers offense doesn't seem to be able to figure out how to be a great complementary awesome team right now. With that said, there are always counter-arguments, such as Steelers defense looks terrible and was embarrassed in their recent loss to the Bengals, giving up 470 total yards. They're unable to change their man coverage scheme even after being exposed by Joe Flacco, who knew there would be windows in that defense. Steelers' scheme is expected to be exposed again as they play a lot of man-to-man coverage, and their secondary is so bad. Darius Slay is mentioned as looking like he is more fit for a wheelchair than covering man-to-man. The Packers' superior receiving speed is seen as a potential difference maker. Point number 2, Packers' defensive strength. The Packers' defense has quality players, including Micah Parsons. Without the emotional fatigue of a revenge narrative, the Packers are perceived as the better team. And then finally, while Rodgers is motivated, Jordan Love is a smart quarterback who is maturing well. If the Steelers are forced to rely on the ground game, the Packers' rush defense, only 76.5 yards allowed per game, is strong and is expected to take away the Steelers' rushing attack. As for the under 45.5, which is a best bet for us, as well as a thing that is talked about quite a bit in the betting circles, some of the components for that: Steelers' offensive limitations. They're expected to struggle offensively, primarily because Aaron Rodgers' receiving core is not trusted. Outside of DK Metcalf, none of the receivers are deemed reliable, and the dependence on 3 or 4 tight ends is seen as a sign that the receivers can't create separation. The Packers' front is expected to absolutely eat them alive, leading to sacks or forcing quick throws from Rodgers, who struggles when pressured. Rodgers is seen as having an absolute nightmare matchup against the Packers' front. The game is viewed as a meeting of 2 similar teams that are inefficient and volatile and will attempt to run the ball and take deep shots. This usually leads to low-scoring close games, with some experts predicting a low-scoring affair should the Steelers cover. So, the other negative part about a low-scoring game is generally it's going to be a close game. It's hard to feel super comfortable in a game, or run away with a low-scoring game, you know what I mean? But there you go. There's all the thoughts for the games today. Really feels like a game we're going to need we're going to need everybody to step up. Fact of the matter is we're going to need our defense to apply pressure to Aaron Rodgers. We're also going to need an offense to take advantage of a defense that's going to give them opportunities. If they're going to give them opportunities down the field, especially if our speed is going to be able to beat their guys in man coverage, then first of all, they have to actually win those matchups in man coverage, and then Jordan's going to have to put the ball on them. We can't see what we saw before, where we had that 2 touchdown game from Golden taken away from us because of an overthrown and an underthrown ball. So we need Jordan Love on his game. We need Matt LaFleur on his game, and we need this defense to really show us some of that fire that we saw earlier in the season. And if they do that, there's no question they walk away with this game. But if you allow Rodgers and the Steelers to impose on you and can't get to Rodgers because you can't stop them from getting the ball out, and they're able to be efficient and work their way down the field and keep your offense off the field, and your offense isn't really able to, establish the run and be efficient enough to sustain drives, well, then we're kind of in this thing we've been in for several weeks now. But we'll see how it goes. You all have a good rest of your day. Hopefully I'll be talking to you tomorrow for Victory Monday. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Come in the Pittsburgh with the yellow and the green in effect. Jordan Love with the spiral, got the secondary rate. Josh Jacobs hit the hold and accelerating go. Tucker Craft with the grab in the middle of the foe. Romeo Dobbs running routes, got the defense in the days. Matthew Golden rookie season setting Pittsburgh up ablaze. Mally Heat coming clutch when we need another play. We be running up the score in the most relentless way. Steelers thinking they can stop us with the home field advantage, but the Packers bringing chaos, better hope your team can manage. Title town tradition from the frozen tundra birth. Green and yellow in your city, gonna show you what we worth. Aaron on the other side, but loyalty don't switch. Pack attack relentless, watch us dominate this pitch. 4-1 and won the record, but we headed for the crown. Prime time Sunday night football, about to break the Steelers down.
Build it up, build it up.
Rapid fire when we strike.
Build it up, build it up.
Yeah, taking over Sunday night. Adrenaline rush, win the pack attack. Green and yellow army, and we never looking back. Never back. Lightning speed with the precision of a champion. Steelers can't defend against the damage that we're bringing them. Adrenaline rush, feel the energy tonight. Lambo Warriors ready for the fight. Title town legacy, 10,000 strong. When the Packers in the building, you know something going wrong. Yeah. Defense bringing pressure, Ration Gary off the edge. Micah Parsons wreaking havoc, got the quarterback on the ledge. Xavier McKinney with the coverage, eliminating hope. Javon Bullet a nickel, locking down receivers like some ropes. Nate Hobbs on the corner, $48 million man. Quay Walker running sideline, executing every plan. A Christian stadium shaking when the Wisconsin boys arrive. Championship DNA embedded, we were built to stay alive. Matt LaFleur scheming, got the playbook like a wizard. Every formation that we're running, got the opposition living. 6 straight home wins for the Steelers in this matchup. But tonight we in the streets, when the green and yellow back up. Jordan Love precision Pittsburgh playing another championship. See, they talking about a home streak, 6 games straight.
We about to end that.
Green Bay coming through, we don't hesitate.
Build it up now.
Faster than they ready for, quicker than they know.
Here we go.
Adrenaline rush, when the pack attack. Green and yellow army and we never looking back. Lightning speed with the precision of a champion. Steelers can't defend against the damage that we bringing down. Feel the energy tonight. Lambo warriors ready for the fight. Out of town legacy, 10,000 strong. When the Packers in the building, you know something going wrong.